Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 228 review. This was actually a 4-week sprint covering the Christmas and New Year's break. A lot of people took a break or took some time off, which is good. So this is an extended sprint time-wise, but probably the same amount of work as a normal 2-week sprint. I'll start with the overview, Jeffrey on the UI, Adam on providers, and Joe on the platform. So like I said, even though it was 4 weeks, it's kind of a reasonably sized sprint with 73 PRs merged this sprint, 26 enhancements, 16 bugs, and a smattering of the rest. And over to Jeffrey.
Hi. In Sprint 228, a total of 14 PRs got merged into the UI Classic repository, out of which 6 are related to bug fixes, 3 for enhancements, and 5 others. I can explain about them in the following slides. David discovered a bug when selecting a namespace in the edit automate method form. The bug was related to one of the methods introduced during a conversion task, which was not being located. To resolve this, David added those missing methods back. Next slide. An error was reported in the add a new container provider form when copying and pasting a text into the hostname field. Accidental white spaces were added, causing validation failures. To address this, we implemented a method to trim the spaces which gets added to the hostname field. Next slide. We encountered another issue with the notifications. Duplicate notifications were appearing on certain pages due to the creation of duplicate WebSocket entries when updating a partial file in the Explorer pages. To resolve this, we implemented a fix by creating the WebSocket channel only for the HTML request and not for the JavaScript request. Next slide. This pull request addresses the issue where upon initial login, no tabs is initially highlighted on the dashboard page. This fix from Gilbert ensures that an initial tab is now highlighted. Next slide. This pull request resolves a minor warning message in the browser console related to the summary or the MIQ structured list component. This warning is caused by the absence of a required title property for the value that renders an image in the React component. So this PR removes this warning by addressing the missing title property. Next slide. The username field was accidentally removed from the groups form in the settings access control module. This resulted in an error during the form submission of this page. So David restored this field and resolved this issue. Next slide. In this PR, Gilbert converted the dashboard tabs to React. Next slide. The embedded method section present in the automate method summary pages was converted from HTML to React. Next slide. Gilbert added the task detail page for the workflows and non-workflow task that is displayed when a user clicks on the task in the settings task page. Next slide. And for the other PRs, the yarn.lock was updated with the latest dependencies. And then David updated a notification message in the service controller to match with the rest of the UI for consistency. And then Jason reverted all of the lockdowns to packages, and Yarn 4.0.2 supports new version of ES Abstract on S390X. And Gilbert updated the Carbon component React to 7.59.17. He also upgraded the dependency packages like React, React DOM, ESLint plugins, StyleLint. So these upgrades are required in order to fix the accessibility violations within the data table component. And in the last PR in this list, Gilbert fixed the chart downloads as JPEG and PNG formats for Morphe. That's all from the UI side. Over to Adam.
Thanks, Jeffrey. For the FlowGen this sprint, we added secure options for passing credentials via the command line utility. These existed for the Ruby interface, but if you wanted to use the command line for more serious purposes other than just simple development, it was required to be able to pass credentials not via a parameter. So we accept both environment variables and standard in pipe to be able to send credentials. Keenan added the ability to run multiple workflows in the exe flow command line utility as well. This is something which also was available via the Ruby interface, but for simpler local testing, we added it to the command line utility. We added the ability for a state to set a new value in credentials. This is a pattern that would map pretty well to something like taking a username and password, getting a temporary bearer token, and setting that for subsequent states to use. So we added that feature there. And Keenan also fixed a bug with Podman empty output, causing an exception to be raised. For core, we switched the host verify credentials to use only DDF parameter types for payloads. There was the ability to use one or the other, and once we converted the UI form, we were able to drop the old support for the old style of credential payload. And also in the API, we dropped the legacy host credentials payload type as well. So it's more consistent with how the exe management system accepts parameters. So it's should be easier for people to use across the board. Next slide. For Google, we added a bug fix which cleans up any disks that got created if the instance clone fails. So for GCE, the steps to create disks is separate from cloning the instance. So if we created additional disks and the clone failed, we were leaving some disks out there, which is obviously not good. So we now delete those if the clone fails. For overt, Nasser moved the smart state supports check out of the core classes and into the VM subclass, which gives us more control over whether smart state is supported or not on the VM. For VMware, he also enabled the non-Rails event catcher by default after the Kafka changes got merged, which I'm sure Joe will talk about. This is pretty big because it allows us to reduce the memory usage by a significant amount. I think we'll have a demo of that probably next sprint. And he also did the same smart state change for VMware as he did for Overt. And finally, for workflows, supporting the feature that we talked about earlier in terms of setting credentials for when it's running as part of the provider, we pull that credential out of the in-memory credentials payload and encrypt it and save it in a secure way in the database so that it can be used by other states. And that's it for providers. Over to Joe.
Thanks, Adam. For platform enhancements and improvements, Nasser mounted a messaging certificate since it's needed for Strimzi, since it requires SSL. He also resurrected the Kafka changes that Adam spoke about. They were previously reverted, and he also initialized the Kafka topics in a ManageIQ appliance. He also refactored the VM store and data store smart state scan checks. As Adam already mentioned, the host verified credentials also moved to DDF parameters. I added support for Ruby 3.1, primarily around maintaining compatibility with YAML load. And previously, we supported both the classic and Zeitwerk Rails autoloader. I dropped support for the classic loader since we've had a few releases with Zeitwerk, and that enabled some removal of technical debt with the classic autoloader. Next, Adam added configuration script credentials to fix all. Nasser also enforced Kafka as the default configuration, and the orchestrator waits for it to be ready. He also replaced Bitnami with Strimzi Kafka, and he updated it. Next slide, please. For platform bugs, Adam updated the TestGem VCR to 6.1 to support a fix for Ruby 3.1. Adam also added stub support and supports not for VM scan specs. And Jason fixed specs for Awesome Spawn where the private interface changed. That's it for the platform.
All right, and that's it for our Sprint 228 review. The next sprint will be back to the normal 2-week schedule. So in 2 weeks on January 24th, that's Sprint 229 at the usual place and time. And as always, I'd like to thank all of our presenters today, everyone from the community, and all the contributors to ManageIQ. Thanks, everyone.